The stars were quiet. Not calm, quiet like the breath held before the scream. Across 100 light-years, comms traffic dwindled. Patrol routes changed. Merchant vessels rerouted without command. And the whispers began. Something had shifted. Not politically, not diplomatically, physically. Space itself felt different. Even the navigators, those strange creatures attuned to gravimetric tides and hyperspace eddies, had started asking questions they weren't supposed to ask. What is that shadow in the void? Why does every jump map have one blind spot now? What moves without warp faster than warp? The vanishing at Klyros 6. Captain Varric of the Zale Coalition stared at the tactical readout in disbelief. An entire armada, 6 destroyers, 2 dreadnoughts and 1 fleet flagship, gone. Not destroyed. Vanished. The distress beacon they managed to send had carried only 3 seconds of audio. This isn't a ship. It's a continent, no, a world, it's. Then silence. When the recovery fleet arrived, they found no wreckage. No radiation. No gravitational residue. Just a slowly spiraling piece of hull metal the size of a fingernail. Burned into its alloy. UNSC, Defender class. Carrier number 0-inch. But Earth has no supercarrier. The galactic record was clear. Earth, the Terran homeworld, had a documented fleet. Small by Council standards. Tactical strike groups. Some exoatmospheric platforms. A handful of cruisers. And yet, there was no record of a Defender-class carrier. Not even a prototype. A phantom designation. When asked, the humans replied with silence. Or worse, confusion. But for the ones who'd seen the beacon, who had decrypted the carrier-class code, it was already too late. Because something had moved. Something big enough to cast a shadow on light itself, and fast enough to do so without being seen. Echoes in deep space. Ensign Tavro of the Venthrix Science Armada was the first non-human to see it, if only for 0.2 seconds. He'd been stationed at Observation Node 334A near the galactic fringe. A lonely post meant for junior officers and forgotten minds. He'd watched nothing happen for 6 months. Then, the void flexed. His words in the incident report. The stars disappeared. Not dimmed. Disappeared. As if something larger than light itself passed between us and them. No engine flare. No radiation bloom. Just absence. His last image before systems shut down was a blurred curve of angular hullwork. And a UN insignia. Human command refuses all inquiry. When confronted, Earth's galactic attaché issued a statement. There are no such vessels in active deployment. That was it. No denial. No apology. No laugh. Just that line. But behind closed doors, the Union Council met for 6 hours without recorders. Not even stenographers. Every attending species signed an NDA under ancient oath-binding protocol. Because humans didn't lie like this. They lied when it was funny. They lied when it was strategic. But when they said nothing at all, when even their generals blinked twice and changed the subject, it meant only one thing. Something was alive that should not be. Where the ship was born. Those familiar with Earth's old mythologies remembered a curious term, black sites. Places even human governments denied. Over the decades, those stories faded into conspiracy. But recent analysis of old deep space telemetry turned up something chilling. In the asteroid belt near Saturn, a dust cloud had once occluded a tiny moon called Mimas. Nothing strange about that. Except the dust pattern? Matched engine wash. Not just from any ship, but from something large enough to generate gravitic lensing with passive thrust. And that same pattern appeared again, this time deep in the Kuiper belt. Then again 40 years later, on the edge of the Oort cloud. Always one pattern. Always no witnesses. And then it appeared. Not in battle. Not in parade. But in response. When the Thrinaxi fired on Earth's outpost on Gliese 442b, an unarmed terraforming colony, a full orbital platform was vaporized. 3,000 civilians lost. Earth didn't reply. Not immediately. But 7 minutes after the attack, every orbital defense satellite in Thrinaxi space shut off. Every weapon platform, non-responsive. Their moon turned on its axis. Just slightly. Enough to ruin all planetary tides. And above their capital, something uncloaked. Not dramatically. Not with theatrical lighting. But with a low, vibrating presence. A wall of armor. Turrets. Engines that didn't make noise but felt like they did in the soul. And on its side, in massive black steel font, UNSC Supercarrier, Ghost of Terra. And the Thrinaxi screamed. Not a weapon, a message. No missiles launched. No invasion. No demands. Just the ship. Hanging. Watching. Some ships command fear. Some radiate power. But this one? It was older than either. It was inevitability forged into form. Because if this was carrier number 0, then that meant one thing. There were more. Galactic reactions. The Alari emissary demanded answers. The humans sent none. The Dreth Empire offered tribute just in case. The humans declined. The Val priests whispered that the old prophecies were true. And humans still said nothing. And then it vanished. Just like that. One blink and it was gone. No hypertrail. No radiation flare. No transition signature. The system scans confirmed, no FTL used. So how did it move? Where did it go? And why did it appear only after 3,000 civilians were incinerated? The answer, like the ship, remained hidden. But for those paying attention, the math was easy. Earth had a supercarrier. It had been hidden for over a century. And it had just blinked.
The ghost of Terra vanished. No ripple. No wake. No warning. Just gone. And what it left behind was not silence, but reverberation. An echo that passed through governments, military command chains, trade consortiums, and priesthoods alike. It didn't matter the shape of your species, or the sophistication of your sensors, you felt it. In every darkened bridge. In every bunker. In every war room. A single question surged like gravity. If that was there. 0. What does 1 look like? Coded silence from Earth. The diplomatic channels tried. Thousands of high-priority requests fired towards Sol's system. The Galactic Council offered to host emergency talks. The Keltari Republic offered mineral tribute. The Kravax Dominion sent a delegation bearing ancient relics they swore Earth would value. The answer? Nothing. No confirmation. No denial. Not even the usual sardonic human sarcasm. Instead, the Earth diplomatic net went dark. Not offline, blacked out. As if it had never been there. When the Alari sent a scout drone into the system, it simply never arrived. Transponders went dark before it crossed Neptune's orbit. The drone never even made it to Sol's light cone. As if space itself had folded around it. That's when the fears shifted, from what was seen, to what was watching. The first interrogation. General Kasha of the Varnak Imperium, a war hero with 6 campaigns under his banner, summoned Earth's ambassador to a secure orbital ring around Azur V. What arrived wasn't a politician. Or even a soldier. It was a human. Wearing civilian clothes. No entourage. No security detail. Just a soft expression and a data pad. He introduced himself with a half-smile. Daniel. General Kasha loomed 3 meters tall and wore a plasma-forged cloak of rank. Daniel wore a coffee stain. And when Kasha thundered, demanding answers about Carrier 0, Daniel simply scrolled through his pad and said softly, "You're asking about an ancient file that doesn't exist." Kasha pounded the table. Daniel shrugged. "You asked for a diplomat. You got one." Then he looked up, eyes flat as cold iron. "You think you're speaking to us? You're not. You're speaking to the part of us we let you talk to. What was it for?" Across the galaxy, speculation exploded. Think tanks and wargamers churned out theories. Was the ghost of Terra a deterrent? Was it part of an ancient Earth defense program? Was it even manned? No confirmed cruise sightings. No visual bridge. No signal exchange. Theories emerged. A sentient AI war vessel, born before the Galactic Treaty banned them. A planet breaker, armed with dark energy singularity weapons. A mobile black site, storing horrors no one should unleash. But one fact persisted: it had intervened only after a human colony was wiped out. Which led to a chilling hypothesis. The ghost of Terra isn't for war. It's for revenge. The Pirith massacre, prevented. A week later, the Pirith raiders attempted a high-speed raid on human trading lanes near Tau Ceti. They had done it before. Skirmishes. Looting. Fleeing faster than patrol vessels could respond. This time, the pirates warped in. They never warped out. No human fleet was in the system. No distress signal sent. But traders from a nearby outpost said they saw something eclipse the stars for 22 seconds. When they looked again, the pirate ships were gone. Not exploded. Erased. Not even atoms remained. And once more, in the void, a trail of light shimmered for less than 2 seconds. Ghost Zero was here. The cold meeting of powers. The Union of 17 convened a closed meeting. Species who had warred for centuries sat across from one another, brought together by a ghost. Plans were drafted. Should they attack Earth preemptively? Should they demand disarmament? But then the Droll technocracy broadcast a decrypted message. Recovered from a 900-year-old transmission buried in Earth's deep space archives. A quote. From a human admiral long dead. We don't build superweapons to use them. We build them to make sure you never think about using yours. The chamber fell silent. Because the message wasn't bravado. It was strategy. The Ghost of Terra wasn't for show. It was an insurance policy older than the current galactic balance itself. Planet-sized logistics. No one knew how Earth built it. Even constructing a hull of that size would require materials that hadn't been extracted since the Orion Dust Wars, and that was 600 cycles ago. Where had Earth sourced such metals? How had they hidden a construction project that large? Some theorized the ship wasn't constructed in Sol at all, but built in another dimension, folded and reinserted. Others whispered the Terrans had made a pact with something older than physics. Some called it the Forge beneath Europa. Others, the AI that never spoke. But the name that stuck, whispered in fear, was the simplest. Mother. As in, mothership. Inside the Ghost. No one had boarded it. No one had returned from contact. But there were rumors. Some said it was partially organic, that its hallways grew and healed. Others swore it was empty of crew, and piloted by a singular human mind stretched across a neural lattice the size of a city. Some said it wasn't a ship at all, but a memorial. A drifting tomb of humanity's darkest hour. Built in secret after the siege of Earth. But why build a weapon, and never use it? Unless that was the point. Message to the stars. A single human probe was found in neutral space. No beacon. No signal. Just a plate. Burned into its metal were words in 73 languages. You harmed our children. We will not respond in kind. But we will watch. And if you try again, you won't know when or how or from where. Only that it was us. The stars became less comforting. Once they had shimmered with the steady pulse of trade and diplomacy. Now they seemed full of shadows. Every beacon flickered with potential threat. Every unregistered signature in deep space might be it returning. The Ghost of Terra had become a legend. But not the kind that fades. The kind that infects. Galactic Response Protocol G7, Invocation of the Threshold. It took less than 2 weeks for the Galactic Council to draft a new Universal Directive, G7, codenamed Threshold. It was never meant to exist. Only in the most apocalyptic scenarios, when a single power posed a threat not through direct conquest, but by destabilizing fear alone. The resolution's language was careful, diplomatic. But behind closed doors it was blunt. If Earth does not reveal its armament capacities, and the Ghost of Terra remains active without Alliance accountability, we must consider extreme containment actions. Containment was a euphemism. Everyone knew it. The Council wasn't preparing for war. They were preparing for annihilation. Not of Earth, by Earth. Meanwhile, in Sol, on the surface of Mars, underneath the Olympus Mons research base, Commandant Evelyn Shea watched the Council's transmission without a word. She wore no medals. No rank. She wasn't military. Not anymore. But everyone answered to her when it came to Ghost. One of her aides leaned forward. Should we respond? Evelyn didn't blink. Not yet. But if they move. They won't. The aide paused. How can you be sure? Evelyn turned her eyes toward a holographic model of the Ghost of Terra, floating silently above a planetary display of Earth and its colonies. Because we're not threatening them. We're reminding them. History never logged. Deep within the hidden archives on Earth, levels of data beyond civilian reach, there existed files labeled simply Stygian 1, Stygian 2, Stygian 3. They weren't plans. They were records. Records of what had come before. Of what Earth had faced long before it was admitted into the Galactic Council. Before it was even noticed by the major powers. There had been incursions. Invaders that didn't come to colonize but to consume. Ancient hive entities. Mindless extinction engines. Eldritch biological networks. Some of them never recorded by any other species. And in each case, humanity had done what no one else had. Survived. At a cost. The ghost wasn't a symbol of power. It was a last resort carved into hull plating and quantum memory. It wasn't built to scare the galaxy. It was built to scare what scared Earth. A crack in the Alliance. The Alliance began to fracture. The Delmar High Synod, longtime architects of peace treaties, called for direct contact with Earth, bypassing the Council entirely. The Drexer, ancient and proud, demanded action. We let this ghost haunt our skies, and soon we will all be slaves to fear. But the Urath matriarchy, oddly silent for weeks, suddenly broadcast a message in every known language. A single phrase, translated over and over. Let them keep their ghosts. You'll wish you had one when the dark returns. That was when panic began to mature into dread. Because the Urath were not weak. They were historians. Archivists of the long night. If they were warning others to stand down, then the threat wasn't human aggression. It was what might come next. Inside the ghost, revisited. No one still knew what it looked like within. But one whisper emerged from a decrypted message lost in an asteroid relay. A former human engineer. Last seen decades ago. Presumed dead. His log file surfaced. His final words, fragmented, but chilling. They called her the ghost. That's not what she is. She's the mirror. She reflects the galaxy back at itself. Its fear. Its pride. Its lies. Its need to control. But inside is something else. Not hate. Not vengeance. Resolve. We built her because we remembered what it's like to be alone in the dark, and have no one come. The Drexer mistake. Pride breeds foolishness. Despite Council orders, a Drexer stealth fleet entered the outer Sol system, using phase distortion fields to approach Neptune. They claimed it was for research. Everyone knew it was a dry run. A test. They didn't even get past the Kuiper Belt. Not because they were destroyed. But because they forgot the ghost doesn't destroy unless it must. Instead, every ship in their fleet was hacked simultaneously. Not with viruses. With invitations. Every screen displayed the same image. A single human child, sitting in a field of white flowers, smiling. Underneath it, text. You were warned. And then, every Drexer ship returned itself to home orbit. Their navigation overwritten. Their command hierarchy disbanded. Entire crews wept uncontrollably for days, haunted by the feeling of being watched by something they couldn't explain. The silence grows louder. The galaxy began pulling back. Exploratory missions ceased. Trade vessels rerouted. Colonization slowed. Every major galactic power, even those who had once mocked Earth's rise, now redrew their star maps. A new dead zone was born, not one with danger, but with doubt. A vast perimeter around the Sol system. Not enforced by warships, but by respect. And fear. A hushed galaxy. The stars were quiet. Not from peace, but from pause. Ships stayed docked. Fleets held formation. Transmissions thinned to whispers. For the first time in galactic history, the galaxy was not united by a council, nor a common cause, but by a single point of silence. Sol. The system that had birthed the anomaly. The ghost of Terra. A vessel no one had seen fully, yet no one could forget. A presence without movement. A shadow without threat. It loomed beyond Saturn's rings, drifting like it belonged to the void itself. Every species waited. Every leader hesitated. And then, at 0300 UGT, it spoke. A voice older than time. There was no signal trail. No spectrum broadcast. No energy signature. The ghost's voice simply arrived. Simultaneously. In the minds of billions. As if the ship itself existed inside every sentient brain. Male and female. Cold and warm. Human and inhuman. The voice spoke one sentence, calm, vast, and unshakable. We remember everything the universe forgets. And then came the images. Memory of extinction. Species across the stars convulsed as their minds were flooded, not with violence, but with understanding. They saw Earth as it was, not how it is. They saw ancient battles fought in silence. Civilizations that came in fire and were met with stone, with blood, and finally, with fire of our own. They saw oceans boil under radiation storms. Cities buried beneath alien spores. Children dragged into learning chambers to study interstellar math between nuclear drills. They saw creatures that never spoke, only consumed. Earth had survived not because it was strong, but because it had been alone for too long. Because no one came to help. So humanity built what it needed. The ghost was not a weapon. It was a promise. And a question. When the next darkness comes, will you run again, or stand with us? The Ancient One stirs. In the dark beyond Zadariel 4, a derelict husk floated, ignored by most, avoided by the wise. It was not a ship. It was a prison. Inside it, something shifted. Something the galaxy had long buried under myth. Something Earth had remembered and planned for. It had no name in language, only in sensation. The Devourer. It sensed the signal from Sol. And it twitched. Earth's real secret. Within the Mars Command Center, Commandant Evelyn Shea leaned forward as Ghost's psychic transmission concluded. Her aides looked shaken. One was crying. Another held their head, as if a migraine had torn through them. Evelyn stood slowly and walked to a private alcove. A wall screen blinked on. A lone man waited on the other end. Elderly, hair gone silver. Dressed in nothing but an old EarthGov pilot's jacket. He looked tired. And proud. You sent the signal, Evelyn said. It was time, the man replied. Will they understand? Some will. Enough. And the rest? The man smiled. They'll learn. Or they'll watch. Behind him, through a viewport, floated Ghost, now fully visible for the first time. Its silhouette stretched 10 kilometers long, layered in angular geometry not even human. Parts of its hull moved, not as mechanical structures, but like living thoughts pulsing in phase. It was alive in ways machines shouldn't be. Not AI. Not organic. Something between. A choice for the stars. The Galactic Council reconvened. Not in aggression. But in awe. The Delmar called it reconciliation. The Uroth simply nodded. The Drexer, after their defeat by Mercy, remained silent. Their fleet returned to orbit and powered down. They were warriors. They understood a force that refused to kill even when it could. Especially when it could. Humanity made no demands. Offered no threats. Only an open channel. We don't want your fear. We want your attention. The darkness that shaped us is still out there. You called us young. But we were born in fire you've never felt. And if you're ready, we'll stand with you. If not, stay out of our way. The coming storm. From the edge of map space, something began to move. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even matter. It was absence given shape. The Devourer had begun its return. Not to target Earth, but because Earth had called attention to itself. The galaxy screamed in meetings. Fear rippled like tsunamis of data. Civilizations evacuated outer colonies. And yet, Earth stood still. Waiting. Preparing. The Ghost hovered above Saturn, open arms to the dark. No shields raised. No weapons hot. Because it wasn't afraid. It was ready. Humanity's final broadcast. As the dark tide grew, Earth sent one final message to the galaxy, public this time. Translated in every known tongue. A message not of conquest, nor plea, but truth. You feared our ghost. But it is only one of many. We didn't hide them from you. We hid them from what's coming. Now we ask, will you help us fight it? Or will your names be the next thing we remember? The stars listened. And slowly, ships began to turn toward Sol. Not to attack, but to stand beside the ghost. Because Earth, long feared, was not the enemy. Earth was the last light in a universe that had forgotten how to remember. Subscribe call to action, in universe style. This tale is but one memory among millions. If the stars moved you, if you felt the tremble of the ghost of Terra in your bones, then stay. There's more we remember, more we'll show. The universe is wide, and darkness always returns, but so do the stories of those who stood against it. Subscribe to The Void Narratives, where the lights never go out, and humanity is never forgotten.